Hello, hi, a very warm welcome to all Times Prime patrons. We've got a very special afternoon planned for you right here at Times Prime, and this is absolutely exclusive for Times Prime users. My name's Vidhi, and you know what's going to happen. We're learning about financial independence today with Sharan Hegde. You know him as Finance with Sharan on Instagram. He's got more than 1 million followers. I'm one of them, and I've got my pen and notepad ready because I'm ready to learn. This man can talk about money and he can make money talk a lot of fun with cosplay, humor. So, anything we need to know about finance, money management, and how to understand the psychology of money, Sharan will tell us exactly that. So, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to invite him now. Sharan, please join us, and thank you so much for joining us actually.
Hi, good afternoon, Vidhi. It is such a pleasure
Hi,
to be here.
Sharan.
Thank you so much for having me here. Hi.
I am very excited. My dad's going to be so proud right now because he knows I do not handle finances very well. And he's going to be like, all right, he's learning something today. So, Sharon, a lot of people have actually wanted to wonder from engineering to helping people understand money and work with finance. How did this
Right.
happen?
Right. It happened, since I was a little kid, was always fascinated with money. And when I was 10 years old, I asked my mother, why do people study? And she gave me a single sentence answer that people study to make money and buy all the things that they wanted. And that sort of like was the seed to little Sharan, like inception. And that has been the driving force for me all these years. And, I've always been, watching videos and reading articles. I always enjoyed learning about personal finance. So that's how knowledge build up happened. And somewhere middle of engineering, I realized that engineering is not something that I wanted to do full time. Why don't I also get into the business field? So that's how I got into management consulting, and then learned more about finance, obviously by virtue of being in management consulting. Surrounded myself with some of the top minds of the country from IIMs. So that's how my knowledge only grew. And then the pandemic was the right catalyst for me to move into content creation because I had more free time. So that's how the entire transition happened.
And the first deal you probably made when you were talking to yourself as the other character,
Right.
the cosplay, how did that happen?
So the cosplays did not start off from the start. It happened as a need of necessity to stand out from the crowd. So in the beginning, I'm a very introverted person, to be honest. Right, I have another Instagram page, which is my personal account, where I only post 5 pictures in a year. So the transition to creating videos was a huge jump for me. So I remember in the beginning, I used to just go to the terrace and hold my camera, and it used to take me half an hour to just shoot a monologue of a video. And then slowly, I got more and more confident. And then what happened was I saw that Instagram was becoming very competitive, and the only way to stand out was to do something different. So that's when I thought, why don't I include some humor as well? And I've been known as a funny guy amongst my friends, so why don't I include some of that humor into my skits, right? And I also had a penchant for acting ever since I was a kid. So why don't I try my hand at acting as well? So I combine finance, fun, and acting into this single thing, and that's how it all worked out.
So you're saying you never did acting before you started Instagram? There was no theater involved in engineering?
No, there was never no theater. It was all through trial and practice, watching myself on the camera over and over again, taking 10, 15 takes, and that's how you just improve, right? It's simple answer, but it's a simple answer that sheer hard work and perseverance to just hone upon that skill over and over again. There was no formal training as such.
A lot of your fans have actually sent us a few questions. They want to know a little more about you. So how about we do a little rapid fire right now? Are you ready?
Absolutely. I'm ready. I'm fired up. Let's go.
Okay. So when you started understanding money and when you had a little bit of money, what was the first asset that you invested in?
Well, that's a very boring answer. I just invested in an index fund, and there is nothing complicated about that. Right?
Okay. Have you ever spent money on something that you regret?
Yes, of course. So I remember buying this online course for studying French. It was a very expensive course. I don't know why I bought that. I think I had a lot of free time in engineering, and I did not really like that course. I don't know French, so I think the answer speaks for itself. Yeah.
A lot of people lose friends or friendships end because of money. As soon as you start lending, borrowing, and never see the money back. Have you
Right.
ever had a friend end because of money?
No, so that's the one golden rule that I have. When a friend of mine is asking me for money, I assume that the money that I'm giving, I'm never going to get it back. So I'm never going to ask them back ever again, right? So when you go with that mindset, you know that the friendship is never going to be jeopardized. So in the beginning only, you're going to only give that much amount of money which you can afford losing, right? So you give it to that person and you never ask it back. Like if they're going to give it back, then well and good. But if they don't give it back, you already assume that it is a loss, right? So that way the friendships are still intact. Yeah.
If you have to lend money, just let it go. Never see it again.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and especially to friends, right? You shouldn't let money, be the cause of friendship breaking, right? So that's the golden rule that I follow.
Very true. What is the most expensive thing you own right now?
Most expensive thing, I would say my phone, right? My iPhone is probably, and even my laptop. It's a MacBook Air. I think these are the most expensive things I own. But again, I consider these as business expenses to do my job better. Guilty pleasure, I mean, I would say probably, I'm not sure actually. I don't really like to spend money, I don't like to throw money away. I would say these are the most expensive things I own. The laptop is about $1 lakh. That's the most expensive thing I own.
Well, I'm glad you had that because we love those reels and the quality is perfect.
Right.
Your advice for millennials on loans.
I would say first try to exhaust all the resources that you have before you go for a personal loan. So firstly, I would say if you already have a fixed deposit, it is possible to take a loan against that fixed deposit, which comes at a very low interest rate, just 1% more than fixed deposit interest rate. So it would be like 6 or 7%. If you already have a home loan in your family, you can take a loan against that home loan and top it up. So it could again be for 7 or 8%. But what most people do is they're so easy to get a personal loan these days, right? And they come at 14 to 16% interest rate. The people don't even consider what are the alternatives and straight away go for a personal loan, which is at sky high interest rates. So I think I would tell the millennials out there, first try to exhaust all the options available out there for getting lower interest loans. For example, the loan against FD and loan against your home loan. And only once you've exhausted all these options, only then move to getting the highest interest rate loan, that is personal loan. So I would say that is the biggest advice I could give. Moving on. These are the myths of real estate, right? So if you see here, this particular graph here, in the first bar chart over here, line, that's India, right? This is an indicator of how expensive real estate is in India. And India, it's 26 times harder to buy a home and 20 times harder to buy a home in India than in US, if you consider purchasing power into play, right? I mean, it's evident, right? I mean, we have 4 to 5 crore properties in Mumbai and nobody is able to buy them. There are so many unsold properties in Bangalore. It means that our property prices have soared to such a high level and it's almost in bubble territory. Right, so these are some of the myths that we have, that house prices can only go up. No, there have been instances where house prices have moved up and down as well. That we are all thinking that it's always going to double and triple. So we're all holding on to our land. We always think, if the house has tripled in over 20 years, it's a good return. But actually, if you do the CAGR calculation, it's actually not that great. And we think that stocks are riskier than real estate. But no, even real estate is almost as volatile as the stock market. Considering inflation. So, inflation even right now is at a very high level. So if you assume even 8% inflation, so you say from over the period of 10 years, the prices have doubled. The average cost of living your life has doubled. And if you had kept it in fixed deposit, your money would have actually reduced by 5%. If you had kept it in a debt fund, your money would have no growth at all. Only if you had kept it in equity, your money would have actually given you some actual returns. Now, that doesn't mean that you should put all your money in equity. That's another mistake that people do. People assume that, okay, if equity is the best performing asset class, why don't I put all my money in equity? No. So there is this modern portfolio theory, which was created by Harry Markowitz. He won the Nobel Prize for this, by the way. He said that there are certain, a combination of asset class mixtures, which we can create, which gives the best returns for the lowest amount of risk, right? And most people ask me this question, Sharan, what is the best return that I can get for the lowest amount of risk? And this is what it is. Have a correct combination of asset diversification. Think about market timing when it comes to investing. Even now, when the markets are down, people are asking, is this the right time to invest? But guys, that simply is not relevant at all. The most important thing is asset allocation. If your asset allocation is solid, you don't even have to worry about, what stock picking you have to do and how to time the market. But most people start with market timing, right? We give so much importance to this, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't even matter, right? Now, coming to the importance of asset allocation, right? Now there is a study which was conducted by Capital Mind, right? So they just took a simple allocation. They divided 100 rupees into 4 equal parts. 25 rupees in the Indian domestic market, Indian equity, 25 rupees in a fixed deposit, 25 rupees in gold, and 25 rupees in the US market. And what they found out is startling, right? Just equally dividing it into 4 different asset classes, both safe and equity. What they found out is, so this is drawdown, right? I know this looks a complicated chart, but actually what it shows is that the maximum drop in the value of your asset or of your investment in any given year. So this gray line is if you have put 100% money in Nifty, which is the Indian stock market, and this green line is that equal asset allocation strategy which we talked about, right? So what you can see here is this the green line is not dropping a lot, right? Meaning your risk has been controlled significantly because you have diversified across 4 different asset classes. Whereas if you had put all your money in one basket, which is the Indian stock market, then there is steep drops. So for example, here in 2008, everybody is aware of the 2008 financial crisis. There is a 59% drop in the value of the investment. Now you can say, Sharan, if I had held it for 15 years, I can still get better returns. It all averages out. But ask yourself, if you were in 2009 and you saw that your entire wealth has dropped by 60%, how would your state of mind be? Would you have gotten a good night's sleep, right? Versus if you had done an equal asset allocation, it would have barely dropped by 20%. Obviously, I would want to be here rather than here, even if you tell me that in the future returns of this would be better. And it is not even that much better, right? It is not even that much better, right? So if I show you next, right? So see here, just direct your attention to the first row here. What you can see here is if I had equally divided, this is EA means equal allocation strategy. That gave 14% returns over the past 30 years. Had I put everything in Nifty, it's 14.4%. So just a 0.4% difference. Right now, you might say 0.4% is still a big deal. But let us say at what cost does it come? This extra 0.4%, at what extra cost does it come? So volatility is a measure of how risky your investment is. So it is a measure of how up and down it goes. So what we saw earlier is how up and down it goes. So it's a measure of that. So you see here, it's 25.7% if you had invested all the money in the stock market, whereas it's only 12.7 if you had put in an equal allocation. Again, drawdown, which is a maximum drop in the value of the investment at any given year. We saw earlier that in 2008 it dropped by 59%. So that's what it's showing here, 59% if you had put all your money in the Nifty. Whereas if you had put an equal asset allocation, it is only 32% drop. So what we can conclude is that, if you do the correct asset allocation, you can reduce your risk by half, right? When I mean reduce the risk by half, the quality of your sleep doubles. First, understand what do you want out of life, right? And divide it into 3 parts: short term, mid term, and long term. Short term is anything that you want in the next 1 to 2 years. So that's a vacation, buying a phone, buying a television. And then medium term goal would be, buying a car, home, or having a baby. And long term would be, planning for your kids' education, their marriage, your retirement, your financial independence, or generally increasing your net worth. Now, each of these goals will have a different asset allocation. For example, short-term goals, you shouldn't put anything in equity. It should be 100% in debt. Long-term goals, it could be 60 to 70% in equity. And within that, there will be multiple divisions that you'll make for large cap, mid cap, and small cap. I won't get into that right now. But yeah, figuring out that is more important than understanding when is the right time to invest in the market and which is the stock should I invest in. Should I invest in this IPO? All of that is secondary, right? You do all of that once your foundations are strong. And this is how foundation building is done. Now, next you might ask me, Sharan, okay, now I know what my goals are. Now, how do I know how much money to invest for each of these goals? So for that, I found this tool. Maybe you can note it down. So it's this tool created by Capital Mind. It's this Capital Mind Wealth Plan Calculator. There are many tools out there. HDFC has created one. And so there are many companies that have created tools, but I've used all of them, and this is the best one that I've found. And you guys can check it out as well and plan your financial goal planning as well. What are the key takeaways from this presentation? Firstly, don't keep your money in savings account. Start investing early, right? If you were not started previously, start now. The next best time is right now. Next is, understand a budget allocation strategy. Understand how much you want to save in the beginning of the month itself and invest it in the beginning of the month. Don't wait till the end of the month. That never works out. Next is delay buying your home for quite some time, right? Don't get into familial pressure of buying a home right away. right? I understand if you've been living in a rented home for the entirety of your life, then it becomes an emotional decision. But if not, just consider renting, right? If you ask me personally, I'm going to rent for the rest of my life while I'm living in India, because you see, a home, I spent 2 crores on a home and it's tied up in my home. It's never going to give me money and feed me, right? Whereas if that 1 crore or 2 crore is in the market, it's going to give me money every month, which I can sustain my lifestyle. So do that first. Achieve financial independence first. There is cash flows coming in every month, right? And only then go for buying a home and all of that, right? That is a mistake which people do, and that is why we end up working till we are 65. That's one of the biggest mistakes we do. And next, what is next? Equity is only one of the few asset classes which has consistently beaten inflation. So you should have equity as a part of your portfolio. I don't care if you tell me, Sharan, I can't take risk, blah, blah, blah. No, you have to have equity in your allocation, whether you think you are worthy of taking a risk or not. If your goal is more than 7-8 years, you have to have equity in your allocation, else you will not be able to survive the high inflation rates in this country. What is fifth? Diversification across asset classes is important. Just because equity is the most best asset class doesn't mean put all your eggs in one basket. I already showed you the performance over the past 30 years. So include all asset classes in your portfolio. Then understand what your financial goals are, because at the end of the day, what is money for? And money is for meeting your financial goals. And then finally, it's not a one-time activity, right? You need to monitor it every year. It's not that I've invested one and I forget about it. You need to constantly monitor the market. Meaning, for example, some years equity will not perform well. Sometimes equity will perform so well that suddenly what happens is 90% of your money is in equity and 10% of the money is in everything else. So you need to again rebalance the money and ensure that the asset allocation which you initially decided upon is maintained. So you do all of this, you'll be better than 90% of the people out there investing today. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, I'm done with the presentation.
All right. Ashish has raised a question now. Any book that you plan to write? Now, that's a good question.
I do plan to write a book. And on the side, I'm also working on my personal finance course, which I'll be launching soon. So I'm sure those two resources will be of a lot of help to my audience. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that the plan is definitely there.
This is when Sharan's character says, "Psych, bro."
Psych. Psych, bro.
Karan's asking, considering the situation of stock market right now, would you suggest, is this a good time to buy, or should we wait for market to bounce?
Right. So again, Karan, so I pointed out, right? Most people think about timing the market as the most important decision that you make. But that is completely irrelevant, right? If you already have SIPs running for investing in equity, keep them running, because right now the markets are cheap. So you want to buy it at these lower valuations. But if you have a lump sum right now, let's say, Karan, you have 10 lakhs in savings account waiting to be invested. Now you want to know whether to enter the market right now or not. Now, I would say it's a good time to enter the market, but if you're unsure, then you can do something known as a systematic transfer plan, where let's say you put this 10 lakhs in a debt fund first, and every month you slowly siphon that money into equity. So you get that dollar cost or rupee cost averaging into play. So I would say this is what you do. But to answer your question about whether the market is good or bad right now, it doesn't matter, because you're anyway investing for the long term.
All right. There's a question from Priyadarshan. There's another question. There's a plethora of questions coming in. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next question. Ashish has asked a question: how to approach towards financial planning for couples where both husband and wife are working?
Yeah. So I would say there are several things that a couple can do together to reduce their tax burden. One is that, you can get a home loan together. So most people, what they do is they'll either get the home loan in the husband's name, or they'll just put it in their wife's name. But if there's both the names included in the home loan, what you can double the tax benefits, right? So the law states that you can deduct your interest paid. You can get tax exemption on your interest up to 2 lakhs. But if there's 2%, it becomes 4 lakhs. So that is something exciting that you can do, if you have a spouse, to reduce your taxes even more. And another thing that you can focus on is, so as a husband and a wife, you cannot do this. So this is something known as a HUF, also known as a Hindu undivided family, right? So if you are a full family, like you have a wife and you have kids, you can create this legal entity called a HUF, which has its own PAN card and bank account. Now you can divert some money to this particular entity, right? For example, let's say you have an ancestral property, which let's say my father has an ancestral property. Now I'll tell my dad, don't give the property to me, give the property to this HUF, which is equally owned by my wife and kids. Now any rental income which is coming from this HUF, and any rental income which is coming from this ancestral property will be taxed to the HUF and not me. Let's say I'm making more than 10 lakhs, so I'll be in the 30% income bracket. But HUF is starting with zero income, so it'll get the benefit of all the tax slabs from the beginning, right? So this is another thing that you can do as a family to reduce taxes. So yeah.
That's good input. I just want to deviate from financial independence for a second. I want to ask you, do you have time for a little love life, or does money management get in the way?
I would say it's quite hard, but I don't have a love life. It's quite hard. Yeah. Very busy.
No, for a lot of fans watching right now, you might just be getting a few DMs very soon. All right. So going back to Priyadarshan's question, which I missed last time, he's raised a question saying, as it's predicted, Sensex will reach at 1 lakh level in the next 4 to 5 years. So why should I not put all my money in mutual funds?
Right. So, like I said, when I talked about the asset allocation, right? If you are going to put all your money in the stock market, you should be in that side of mindset that I'm never going to look at the stock market returns for the next 10 to 15 years. Is that possible? No, because whenever there is a market drop, which is like right now, every news agency is going to report it, right? You are going to get that information to you whether you like it or not. Now you need to ask yourself whether you have the maturity to not be affected by that. For example, if I tell you right now, right, you put let's say you're worth 1 lakh. Let's say you have 1 crore rupees. You put 1 crore rupees in the stock market because you have that strong conviction that Nifty is going to 1 lakh level. And Sensex is going to 1 lakh level. Now, 2 years later, there is a correction, and let's say it's a crash, 60% drop in the value. Now your 1 crore is worth 40 lakhs. Now you will tell me that but 20 years later, this 1 crore will still become 3 crores or 4 crores. But 3 years later from now, it has become 40 lakhs. Do you have that maturity to say, okay, this is fine? I don't think most people do, right? I don't think most people can stomach that kind of a loss. So that is why it's important to diversify across multiple asset classes and not put all your eggs in one basket. Because investing is not just about getting the best returns. It's also about ensuring a peace of mind.
It's wonderful. Your parents are very proud, aren't they? You're probably giving financial advice to all your relatives for free.
Right.
Prajwal has asked a very serious question. He's 21 years old. He's earning 7.5 lakhs per annum. And he intends to quit his job in 2 years and start something of his own. How can he do his financial planning if he wants to do something like this?
So I would say, so if he's making 7.5 lakhs per year and if he's planning to start a job, it depends on how much money he has already accumulated.
He's already working. He plans to quit his job in the next 2 years.
Right. So firstly, I would like to ask you, how much money you have already saved, right? If you've already saved something like, let's say 40, 50 lakhs, then I would say you can take that risk because it again depends, right? Whether you're single, whether you have a family or not. So it depends on what stage of life you're at. Okay, you're 27 years old. So I'm going to assume that, is he 27? Am I reading the right question?
21.
He's 21. Okay. So if he's 21, then he doesn't have a family. Then his risk-taking capability will be definitely high. Right. So I would say, move to a cheaper location, maybe not live in a metro city like Bangalore or Mumbai, maybe move in with your parents so that way your expenses come down. Right. That's what I did, by the way. When the pandemic happened, like most of us, I stayed at my parents' house in Bangalore for almost 1.5 years. So no rental expense, no food expense, nothing, zero. Expenses are zero. Right. So if you can do that, then definitely you can take this plunge and focus on your business. Because if you don't do it now, then the risks of starting it later and later becomes more and more. Once you become 28, 29, then leaving your job and starting a business might be more risky. Or once you have wife and kids, then it becomes more and more risky. So you might as well do it right now, but ensure that your expenses are low, move to a cheaper location, and also ensure that you have a certain corpus for emergency funds as well in case things don't go well.
All right, good luck, Prajwal. Vivek has asked a question. As a student with a limited amount of income, what do you suggest they should be doing to get into investing?
So students with a limited amount of income, so I would say, right now, obviously your investing capacity is low, right? So even when I started, I had how much? I had around 27,000 rupees monthly salary living in Bangalore. And I could barely save about, 5,000 to 10,000 per month, which was obviously, it takes months and months to even see that 1,000 turn into a lakh, right? But that should not dissuade you, right? You should still start investing because it is in the beginning years of your life. It is not so much about how much money you've invested. It is about the fact that there is more time of that investment, right? Something that is invested when you're 20, like even if it's a smaller amount, the compounding effect is significantly more when you reach 60 versus, let's say you're investing 1 lakh when you're 30. It has 10 years lesser to compound. So that is the point which people don't understand. So in the formula, which all of us are familiar with, amount is equal to principal into 1 plus r to the power of n. That n, which is time, it is whole to the power, right? So it has the highest weightage given, right? And most people focus on the p part of it, which is the principal component, which doesn't have any power associated with it. Only time has the power associated with it. So more important is time. Having said that, I would strongly suggest that if you also invest some money in actually learning about investing, right? Obviously, there is a lot of free content available out there. That's how I studied as well, right? I watched a lot of YouTube videos to learn and educate myself. But then beyond that, it becomes difficult, right? Because then you'll have to go to books and articles, and sometimes it gets very difficult to fathom books and articles. And not most people are even interested in doing that, right? I mean, I'm very interested about reading his books and articles, so I consume it like I'm just reading a fictional novel. But most people, it might not be as easy as that, and they may not have the interest to do that. So they might rely on a financial planner. Now, financial planner, everybody doesn't have access to a financial planner, right? So I would say try to at least watch some content on how to do financial planning. And then finally, when you're making more money, you know how to invest. And then if you have the interest, then go to books and, actually investing some money to learn about investing.
That's an interesting approach. Reading financial books as fiction novels. That's fantastic.
Right. That's just me. Right? I wouldn't advise that for everybody.
It won't work for me. All right, so Ganesh has a question. He's 27 years old. He left his job preparing for UPSC exam, and he has about 7 to 8 lakh of saving. How should he manage that saving?
Right. So Ganesh, you're preparing for the UPSC exam. So I would say for the next 3 to 4 years, you're just going to be doing that. So I would say you don't have any other goal at the moment, right? Your goal is only to crack that exam. So I would just say, don't stay in an expensive city. Just move to your hometown. And that 7 to 8 lakhs, I'm assuming you don't have any near-term goals at all. If you don't have any near-term goals, then simply put a bulk of that money in an index fund and let it compound. And if you have some near-term goals, let's say buying a vehicle or something of that sort, then allocate that money towards debt. Right. But I will need to know more about what your goals are before I can suggest how to invest that money. Right. The information that you've given me right now is not fully sufficient.
All right. So maybe Ganesh, you can send us a follow-up update on your question, and then we'll move on to the next one. Pranav is asking, what's the percentage of income one should save?
I would say as much as possible, right? So that is a mistake which many people do. There is so much information on the internet saying invest 20% of your money and spend 30% of your money and another 10-15% for traveling and all of that. All that is completely nonsense, I would say. Your goal is to maximize your savings rate when you're young, right? Because if your goal is to be financially independent as soon as possible, you need to increase your savings rate in the beginning, right? You shouldn't just be like, okay, I've saved 20%, I'm going to spend the rest. That is a mistake which many people do. Understand how much money you actually need to spend, right? I'm not asking you to be frugal here. I'm saying, understand what your food expenses are, how much your clothing expenses are, and also keep money for entertainment. And only spend that, budget for spending that. Because there is no incremental happiness that you're going to get versus spending, let's say, for example, in my case, I don't need more than 50,000 per month, right? Now, I've also noticed that in some of the months I would have spent 1 lakh a month. But there is no incremental happiness when spending 50,000 per month versus 1 lakh per month. But that is what we do usually, right? If there is 1 lakh surplus, we try to spend it all, we party and we spend it. But there's no incremental happiness. And you can judge it for yourself as well, looking back upon your life. So what I would say is, let's say you make 1 lakh in a month, right? Now you only need 50,000 for that month to survive. Immediately invest that 50,000 at the beginning itself. And then you know that I have only 50,000 rupees per month. I know that I can spend only that much. You will find a way to spend that only 50,000. You will not need more money. I promise you that. So to answer your question, there is no magic percentage as such. If it is 99% savings, go for it. Right? If you only need to spend 1% of your income, assuming you make a lot of money, if you only need to save 1% of your income, just do that. Right? There is no magic percentage.
The key is to be honest about your expenses.
That's right. There are so many apps that you can use as well to evaluate your historical expenses, and you can figure it out.
Ankur hasn't sent a question, but he has sent a very beautiful comment, which I agree with, which he says, Sharan, you're brilliant. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankur.
Weber wants to know if there's a book that you want to suggest on financial independence.
Absolutely. So I would say a very good book which I would recommend is 13 Steps to Bloody Good Wealth. It is a book which is written for the absolute beginner in mind. Anybody can read it, right? No excuses at all. You cannot tell me, Sharan, I don't understand finance, I don't know math and all of that. No. This book is written in such a way that anybody can understand. So that is the go-to book, I would say, for someone who is just starting out.
Could you repeat the name of the book in case somebody missed it?
13 Steps to Bloody Good Wealth.
All right. Ricardo has raised a question. Please share a good allocation strategy.
Right. So, so something for a long-term goal, I would say around 60 to 70% in equity, around 20% in debt, around 10% in gold, and depending on your risk appetite, I would say something like around 5% in crypto. Right. Don't put more than 5% in crypto. So this is what I personally do as well. And if it's a short-term goal, if you need the money in the next 2 years, then put all the money in a debt instrument. It could be fixed deposit or a debt mutual fund. But if you feel like, Sharan, I think the market is going to go well, I want to take some risk, then not more than 10 to 20% in equity for a short-term goal. So, yeah.
All right. So another question that's come in. If you were given 5 crores, what would you do with it?
5 crores. Okay. So 5 crores is something that, which would give me financial independence right away. I'll tell you why. Because if I invest 5 crores in the asset allocation that we just spoke about, obviously I'm going to invest the money. I'm not going to spend it. But depending on the kind of question you want to ask me, if I'm going to say, I want to invest that money, and let's say I invest in the asset allocation that we just spoke about, even if it gets me, let's say 10% return, like, which is not outlandish to think about, 10% returns pre-tax, that's about 50 lakhs a year. I can live off 50 lakhs a year comfortably 3 times, 5 times over, right? So then I will spend that 50 lakhs to live the kind of lavish lifestyle I want. I'm not going to touch that 5 crore. So with this 50 lakhs, I can, stay 1 month in India, 1 month some other country. I can just keep traveling the world, 1 month India, 1 month somewhere else. So that is what I would do. But I think what most people would do, and the reason why most lottery winners in the world have become broke is because they are spending that 5 crores right away. They buy a home, they buy an expensive car, they go on lavish vacations, they buy expensive clothes. So they're spending their machine and not spending the output of that machine. So that is a mistake which we all do. So don't spend the machine. 5 crores is a machine. And let it grow and compound. And whatever return it's giving you, spend that. And I told you, 5 crores can give you 50 lakhs, which is more than enough to live any kind of lifestyle you want, anywhere in the world.
All right. And someone's asking, there's no name of the user here. What is the best advice you've received from someone?
Best advice I've received, I would say not to invest in real estate until you've achieved financial independence, right? Because most of us are told, even my parents keep telling, right, you need to buy a home, by the time you're 31, 32. Because the thing is, what happens is, it is used as a bargaining chip, for matrimonial reasons, and everybody knows about that. And that's why most people end up doing that, right? And that's the questions which are asked as well. Do you own a home? Do you have your own house? But that's the biggest mistake that you can make. And most people don't even think twice about getting into a home loan because they think it's second nature and it's that's something that they have to do. But it need not be, right? Because it is the most important decision of your life, I would say. Most important financial decision of your life. Because it's 1 crore, man. Come on, 1 crore, which is something that you're going to have to pay for 30 years. That is the most important decision of your life. And I see people getting into that. People asking me, hey, Sharan, I'm 28, 29, about to get married. I want to buy a home. We've all been fed that gyan over decades from our parents and relatives, and it's so difficult to change that outlook. So when I got that advice, my mind was blown, and I saw the data. So that is the biggest advice I got.
All right. The real estate thing is very important because I think every Indian parent is telling their child, you have to have a house. Like that's their ultimate dream. What you're saying right now is very, very important.
Right.
Ritika has asked a question. What do you think about crypto? Is it a logical investment instrument or is it just a gamble?
No, I definitely think it's a logical investment instrument. Definitely not a gamble. There are some real use cases which are derived out of cryptocurrencies, real world use cases. For example, if I had to give you one right away, for example, let's say real estate, right? Now, when I talked about earlier real estate, I was talking about buying a home for yourself. But what about real estate investment in commercial properties, right? Let's say I want to buy an office property, right? But I don't have the money. They're usually in crores, right? So what can I do? I can divide that into 100 different parts, right? And each of those parts can be owned by different people. Something what REITs have done, real estate investment trust. But blockchain technology can be used for any property. Let's say I want to, there is a vacation rental home in Paris. Right now, rental yields in European countries are very high compared to India. Now, I don't have millions of dollars to invest there. So what will I do? I will pull 1,000 people together and buy a small piece of the rental of that vacation property, and the rental coming from that will be divided across all 1,000 people. So that can be done using blockchain technology. So that's an example of a real world use case of how cryptocurrencies is helping the world. Now, coming to how much you should invest, obviously it is one of the most volatile asset classes that ever exist. So obviously don't put more money than you can afford to lose. And if you're a beginner, stick to blue chip cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. Don't go much beyond that if you don't know what you're doing. And you can also explore DeFi protocols where you're lending your money and you get a return on it, right? So that will be my 2 cents about cryptocurrencies. And it's not a gamble at all. Unless you're investing in something you don't understand, it's definitely a gamble.
All right. Reading is very important. Every time you put your money somewhere, please read about it first, clearly.
Right. Absolutely.
Don't just listen to your friends.
Yeah.
Sanchit's asked a question. He's 25 years old, and where should I invest in equity like blue chips or growth stocks for long term? And he can invest 10K per month.
Yeah, I would say if you know how to pick stocks, then go for it, because that is the the best way of growing your money. But that requires significant amount of time and effort. So first, learn how to do it. But if you don't know how to pick stocks, then I would say if you have 100 rupees allocated for equity, I would say put something like 40-50 rupees in index funds, because let's say in equity you have three different options. One is the large cap funds, mid cap funds, and small cap funds. Now each of these different, so they basically mean large companies, middle sized companies, and small companies. Now each of these perform in a different way. Depending on the year, maybe a large company is performing well, or maybe this is the year of small companies performing well. That's what happened last year. So you need to diversify across all these different kinds of companies. Now, when it comes to large companies, my advice is stick to index funds, because actively managed large cap mutual funds have not been able to beat the index. So stick to index funds and let 40-50% of your money, of your equity money, be in index funds. And then I would say around 30% in mid cap and another 20% in small cap. So this is how I would say, if you don't know how to pick stocks.
Before you started giving financial advice to friends and then to Instagram, who was that one person who probably gave you advice? Was there a mentor, or did you just start doing this on your own?
So that's the problem with it. There was nobody, right? And that is what most people face in India, right? There's nobody that they can completely rely upon. And I didn't have either. So who can I rely on? I was relying on, initially we rely upon our parents. And my parents, unfortunately, had put almost all their money in fixed deposit. Only now that I have become financially literate, over the past 3-4 years, I've been helping them reallocate their money and put in other asset classes. But they have only been putting in fixed deposits, right? Apart from that, I would say once I started the journey of learning personal finance, I was surrounded by some of the smartest people. Like I said, I was in management consulting, so I was surrounded by people from IIM. So there was the right kind of crowd to be around to learn more about finance. So I gained a lot of knowledge through them as well. But most people are not that lucky, right? We just have one person that we rely upon, and we take all their advice from them. And we don't do our own research as well because we are too lazy. So that's the sad reality that exists today.
That is very true. And I don't want to admit that is me. Eklavya Mahajan has a question. What's a good short-term instrument to park money and earn the best returns? Is invoice discounting good?
Right. So short-term instruments, there is liquid funds. Obviously, savings account from small finance banks are pretty good. And I wouldn't say fixed deposit, because when you mean short-term, I'm going to assume that you might need that money, at a moment's notice. So fixed deposit might penalize you for putting there, right? But you can put in fixed deposits of small finance banks because they have a higher interest rate. So even if they penalize you, it's fine. So liquid funds, ultra short-term debt funds, so all these are good debt options. Even secured bonds is a good option. Invoice discounting, it is definitely good, but it is not for short-term investments. It is a kind of alternate investment asset class, meaning anything which doesn't fall into the bucket of equity, debt, and gold is called alternative asset classes. Now, in alternative asset classes, there is stuff like artwork, wine, and startups, and invoice discounting is also one of them. Now, the thing with invoice discounting is the risk is a little higher because there is concentration risk. So if that one particular company is failing to repay the loan, then you're stuck, right? So, for example, in a mutual fund, you're investing in 20 to 30 different companies in one shot. Whereas in invoice discounting, it's just one company. So that's why the risk is a little bit higher. But that said, that shouldn't deter you from investing there. It has been showing good returns as well. But if the money is for something very important, let's say you're saving up for your son's education 2 years from now, then I wouldn't put it there. Simple as that.
Gautam is a fellow Mangalorean, and he says hi to you. He says, "Dear Sharan, your videos can be termed as fun with knowledge. Best stress busters for any day. Thank you for your service."
Thank you, Gautam. And hi, I would like to meet you once I'm in Mangalore. Hi.
Pranav has sent a question saying, given so many market uncertainties like war, pandemic, inflation, and recession, how do we navigate the markets right now?
See, I would say that shouldn't be your concern at all, right? These are things which have been happening for decades now, right? We've gone through First World War, Second World War, Cold War. So all of those have not deterred the market at all, right? It is not possible to understand what's going to happen. These things are macroeconomic factors which you cannot predict at all. Like not even the mutual fund managers, can predict it. What they do is they buy some hedging options, meaning they buy some options which ensure that even if the market goes down, they make money, right? And they keep a certain portion of money in instruments like that. So they do that already, right? And they do that all the time. Whether there is a good situation or bad situation, it is basically a recession-proof investment option. So they're already doing that. If you know how to do it, then do it, but it's really complicated. So I would say just give your money to a mutual fund manager. He'll do it for you. So don't worry about it.
Kennel has a question saying, should one invest in NPS?
Should one invest in NPS? I would say you can. There are some tax benefits as well. But the only thing is there's a huge lock-in period. But if you're going to live in India and you're going to work till the age of 65, and if you want some good tax saving benefits until then, and all the money which comes out later or out of that also is tax free. So I think it's definitely a good investment option. NPS. It is the equivalent of what the US have is they also have their own retirement scheme. I forget the name, but I definitely think it's a good investment option. You can put it there.
All right. Another question is, what is the best asset allocation for senior citizens?
Yeah, so this is a very complicated question because there are different kinds of senior citizens. See, most people falsely assume that because that person is old, he should not take any risk and put all their money in fixed deposit. So that's not simply true, because most senior citizens, I wouldn't say most, because there are some senior citizens who would have accumulated a lot of money because they're old. They have been growing their money for so many years now, right? So if you have a huge corpus, let's say I'm 65, now I know that I only need 2 to 3 crores for the rest of my life, but I have accumulated like 10 crores. Now I wouldn't say put 10 crores in a fixed deposit because you have more money than you need. So then you might as well put in risky investment so that your kids get more money after you die, right? So that is one way. But if you are a senior citizen who has just enough money to survive you till you die, let's say 2 to 3 crores, then the asset allocation will be different, right? Then what I would suggest is first start off with a very safe portfolio. Let's say 40% equity and 60% gold, 60% debt. And then every year increase the allocation to equity. Now this might sound counterintuitive, right? Sharan, why are you telling me to increase equity as I get older? The reason being, for senior citizens, there is something known as the sequence of returns risk. Meaning, when you're young, you're not touching your investments. You're just letting it grow. So even if the market moves up and down, it doesn't matter because your money is growing and you're not touching it. But when you're old, you're going to withdraw from that money because there is no salary anymore. So you're going to withdraw that money which you have saved. Now, if there is a down in the market, let's say as soon as you retire, there's a down in the market. At that point, if you start withdrawing money, it's going to be disastrous. Why? Because you are removing money when the market has fallen. So this is known as sequence of returns risk. So for that reason, start off with a very safe portfolio, which is 60% debt and 40% equity. And as the years go on, increase slowly to equity. Because in the later years, if the market crashes, it's fine because you're already really old, right? And the money has already grown to a certain extent that even if it crashes a little bit later, money is already big. But if it has crashed a little bit earlier, then it's going to be a problem. So I would say that. And always have around at least 8 to 10 years of your yearly expenses in safe instruments like debt, right? Or at least 8 to 10 years. Because even if the market crashes, you have 8 to 10 years of money ready for you to spend because the market will recover in 10 years, right? So don't touch that market allocation. Only spend this 8 to 10 years of debt portfolio. So these two, what I just talked about, is called bucketing strategy. The second one is just talked about. And the first thing is called the equity glide path method. So you can Google them and find out how to do it.
Perfect. Gaurav asks, investment advice for people from government jobs as they're not allowed investing in share market because of speculation.
People from government, they're not allowed investing in share market. So I'm sorry, I cannot give advice for people in government jobs because I'm simply not aware of what investment options are available to them, and I'm not aware of the laws which pertains to government job people. I only know about the common man. Sorry.
Okay, next question. Tanmay has raised a question saying, should we buy the dip, sell when the price rises, and then again buy back when the market dips, or should we just stay invested irrespective of whatever happens?
So you just say invested irrespective of whatever happens. The thing is, you don't know what the dip is, right? You think right now the market has fallen to the 16,000 level. You think this is the lower part, but what if it is not, right? What if it drops even further, right? But what I'm saying is, you can invest. It is a good time to buy. But if you're trying to time the market, then shouldn't take too much risk. Like, it depends on how much money you're investing. If you're investing your entire life net worth, taking this big bet, then if the market further crashes 20%, then you'll be in a big soup, right? So don't try to predict the ups and downs, right? Just stay invested irrespective of whatever happens. That is not your job. That is the job of the mutual fund manager, unless you're the mutual fund manager himself, or your full-time job is managing money. Only then you do these kind of things. If you already have a full-time job working at a company and you barely have 5 to 10 minutes per day thinking about investing, then this is not something that you should do.
If somebody wants to invest about only 30,000 rupees a month and that's the only money they have, should they divide the money, and how should they divide it?
If it's 30,000 per month, I would say, assuming that you're living in a city like Bangalore, and let's say your monthly expenses are coming up to 15-20,000, so you have 10,000 left to save. Now 10,000 left to save, again the same principles come into the picture, right? You need to understand what your goals are. What are you saving for? If you are planning for an education, higher education like masters or an MBA 2 to 3 years from now, then obviously all of that money should go into a safe instrument. But if you say, Sharan, no, I don't have any goals for the next 10 years, everything will go to something in the future like retirement, then follow the asset allocation that I talked about earlier for long-term investing. That is, 60-70% equity, 20% debt, 10% gold, and 5% crypto. It doesn't matter what the quantum of that investment is. The equity asset the allocation will remain the same. Depends whether it's a short-term or a long-term goal.
Okay. Thank you, by the way. Again, you're answering a lot of important questions, and questions are pouring in. Rishi has a question. What do you think about Smallcase? Is it good for someone who is new to stock market? Is it better than mutual funds?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So firstly, a Smallcase is basically like a mutual fund, a basket of stocks. The only difference is that you get to see what those stocks are in your demat account. Whereas in a mutual fund, you don't get to see those individual stocks showing up in your demat account. You just see the mutual fund units. So that is the difference. Now, coming to whether someone should invest in that, I would say it's a good idea because I also personally invest in Smallcases. The unique advantage of a Smallcase is that you get to invest in themes, right? It's when I spoke about mutual funds, there is large cap, mid cap, and small cap, and there are also thematic mutual funds as well. But in a Smallcase, you can go one step beyond that. For example, let's say there is something known as a momentum strategy. Right, momentum strategy basically is based on the philosophy that stocks which are moving in a momentum, which are going up in a momentum, they will continue to do so because of the herd movement, right? So there is an algorithm built for this on how to invest in these kind of market scenarios. Now, this is usually only available to HNIs, right? It's usually a part of hedge funds or PMSs for which minimum investment is 50 lakhs. Now, Smallcase has democratized that. meaning it has made it accessible to retail investors like you and me who don't have more than 1 lakh to invest. So Smallcase allows you to access these kind of investment options, which was until now only available to the wealthy people of our country.
All right, Sharan, thank you so much for your time. I'll ask one last question. Shivam has asked a very important question. How do you motivate your parents to move funds from FD to mutual funds? How did you do this, and how can everybody else do it?
So I did that exactly, right? So it was simply, by just showing them past returns, telling them, giving them the relationship between inflation and returns, telling them that, if your money is not beating inflation, it's just going to fall in value. And obviously, they are very well aware of the disastrous effects of inflation, right? They are the ones who will tell you that, what do you say, let's say going out restaurants was so cheap back then in my day, and today it's so expensive. So they know about inflation very well. So drill on that point first, saying that this has happened because inflation is 6-7% and your fixed deposit is giving 4-5%, so it's not going to cut. Second thing, talk about the taxation savings, saying that fixed deposits are taxed as per your income slab, so 30% is gone, whereas in debt mutual fund you have a lot of benefits for saving taxes. And finally, I would say you tell them that you're saving money for your kids, right? I'm not going to let you invest in fixed deposits, so you might as well invest in the place that I'm telling you to invest, right? And I will tell them that you will take care of them if anything bad, if the markets fall, because you're earning a good amount of money. But tell them that this money which is their corpus, which has accumulated, don't let it go to waste in poor performing asset classes, and give you the responsibility for handling it. And you tell them that you will cover them in case something bad happens. Obviously, you need to be confident in what you're suggesting, and only then you can tell them that. So yeah, that's fair advice. That's what I did, by the way. And now I handle their money.
Yeah, in case logic doesn't work, just add a pinch of emotions to it. They will have to listen to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sharan. You've answered so many questions today, and anything you'd like to say to your followers, people who are who keep asking you for tips, what is that one tip you'd like to give everybody?
I would say, we are all very optimistic right now. It is because most of us, our parents have been blessed with phenomenal real estate returns, right? People who invested in real estate back then, 10, 20 years back, have seen phenomenal returns, and those benefits are going to come to us. But what if you are not in that fortunate sector of people, right? Then I would say that it's going to get a little bit tough, because real estate is not going to save you this time. Now you need to understand what other asset classes are going to work for you, right? So learning how to invest has become very important today, especially in a country like India, where inflation is soaring right now. And it is also predicted that, in countries like, so in the past in India, most people had government jobs, so they have pension to survive them right now, right? Government is paying them money to meet their expenses. And even in countries like Western countries like US and let's say Canada, the government takes care of them when they get old. But in a country like India, unfortunately, no one's going to take care of you when you get old. And it is also predicted that there is a humongous gap of people having saved enough amount of money by the time they hit retirement. And that gap is only going to increase for millennials and Gen Z, right? So I would say the situation is a little bit serious right now. So learning how to invest and understanding how to invest for the goals that you want to save for has become very important. Retirement is not supposed to be started planned once you hit 60. Retirement planning has to start today, right? So that is what I would like to tell the audience, right? Investing is no more a good to have option. It has become a necessity for everybody.
Yeah. Definitely, absolutely. When is that book coming out? That book you're writing?
Probably a few months. I don't know. I mean, it'll come out when I'm happy with how it's written. But yeah, I cannot give a timeline. Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you so much for your time, Sharan. Thank you for answering all the questions that were sent. Yeah. I hope you also enjoyed this.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Answered so many questions, and really nice to see that people are asking so many questions, and there's so much interest among the audience today about personal finance. So it was a pleasure helping people out and help them plan their finances.
Thanks, Sharan. We'll see you again. And I'd like to thank all the Times Prime users as well for being a part of this and sending in their questions. I hope everybody got to learn a few things today. And I'd just like to say to all the Times Prime members, stay tuned for the next event, because we've got a lot of things planned for you right here on Times Prime. Tell your friends, tell your family about us. And again, thank you so much, Sharan, for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.